The wind cut across the open fields like a blade as Elena knelt in the dirt, her hands raw, splintered, and trembling from the cold as she tried to fit two broken boards together to form a wall that could barely stand on its own. Much like her heart after months of crushing loneliness, unpaid bills, and the echo of her husband's laughter that still haunted the small ranch he left behind, she bit down on her lip, refusing to let the tears fall because crying didn't fix roofs. Crying didn't stop storms, and crying definitely didn't raise her daughter. Lily, who sat bundled in a thin blanket on the porch, legs tucked to her chest, watching her mother fight against a world that had taken too much, too fast. Elena used to be gentle, soft-spoken, artistic, the kind of woman who painted wildflowers and baked bread on Sunday mornings, but grief reshapes people, and hers had carved her into a woman who worked because working meant surviving, and surviving meant giving Lily at least one safe night of sleep in a place that didn't leak or creak or threaten to collapse the moment the winter storms arrived. But as she hammered a bent nail into the board, the sound of footsteps behind her froze everything inside her. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was, because the air always changed when he was near, tightening around her like a memory she didn't want but couldn't escape. Caleb, her late husband's brother, the man who vanished years ago, the man who didn't attend the funeral, the man who left his family behind because he refused to stay in the town that reminded him too much of the brother he could never compete with, stood silently a few feet away, his jaw clenched, hands in his pockets, boots dusty from a road that stretched too far between them. Their eyes met for the first time in 2 years, and something inside both of them shifted. Though neither could name it, Elena felt a shiver, not from cold, but from the sudden awareness of being watched in her weakest moment, while Caleb felt guilt pound against his ribs like a fist as he took in the sight of her tired, thinner, holding everything together with courage and nothing else. "You shouldn't be here," Elena whispered, her voice cracking despite her attempt to sound strong. But Caleb didn't step closer. He stayed right where he was, his voice low as he answered, "I came because I heard about the storm coming tonight, and because I should have come a long time ago." His words stirred old resentment. She remembered how her husband Aaron used to talk about Caleb, calling him a wanderer, a runner, a man who always chose the road over responsibilities. But now here he was, standing in front of her when she had no one left, and that anger mixed with relief in a way that confused her heart. Lily, recognizing him from old photos, lifted her head and called out softly, "Uncle Caleb?" And that one small question shattered something inside him. He walked to her slowly, kneeling down to meet her eyes, brushing dirt from her sleeve as he whispered back, "Yeah, sweetheart, it's me." And Elena saw the way his face softened, how grief weighed heavy in his posture, how much he looked like Aaron when he smiled without realizing it. But she turned away quickly, returning to her broken boards, refusing to show that seeing him stirred a storm inside her too vivid to confront. Caleb watched her in silence a moment before stepping toward her, taking the hammer from her hand without asking permission. She tried to snatch it back, but he held firm, his voice calm but full of something stubborn. "This isn't a shelter. This is going to fall the moment the wind hits it. You can't keep Lily safe in something built from scraps." His words struck hard, not because he was wrong, but because she already knew that. And hearing it out loud felt like failure punching straight into her chest, but she swallowed the hurt and answered sharply, "It's all I have. Unless you've come to make my life harder again, I'd appreciate you leaving." Caleb didn't move. Instead, he bent down, picked up a fresh plank he had brought in his truck, and laid it gently beside her. "I didn't come to leave this time," he said, voice rough with sincerity that startled her. "I came to help." Eleanor stared at the plank, then at him, suspicious of his sudden arrival, because men who walked away once usually walked away again, and she couldn't afford more heartbreak, not when she was barely holding herself together. "You think you can just show up and fix everything?" she asked, her tone sharp enough to cut. "No," Caleb admitted softly, "but I can fix this wall. And maybe I can be here for the rest, too. The weight of his words hung between them, fragile and trembling like the half-built shelter behind her. She wanted to say no, to tell him she didn't need him, that she had carried everything on her own and didn't need a man to swoop in like some savior. But when she looked at Lily, shivering in the cold, she realized this wasn't about pride, it was about survival. So she nodded once, a small, reluctant motion that felt like opening a door she had sealed shut long ago. Together, they lifted the boards, their hands brushing occasionally, sending sparks of grief and memory and something new through both of them. They worked in silence at first, the only sounds the wind and the hammer striking nails, until Caleb finally broke the quiet. "I'm sorry for not being here when Aaron—" He stopped, choking on the words, and Elena's breath hitched, because hearing her husband's name still touched the deepest wound in her heart. She didn't answer, not yet, because forgiveness wasn't something she could give in a moment. But she didn't shut him down either, and that small mercy made Caleb breathe a little easier. The more they worked, the more he realized how much Elena had suffered alone. The weakened fence, the broken barn door, the unpaid electricity line running dangerously close to collapse, and each detail fueled a burning anger inside him, not at her but at himself for leaving her to drown in responsibilities she never should have faced alone. When the sun began to lower, golden light falling gently on the shelter they had managed to rebuild halfway, Caleb wiped sweat from his forehead and whispered almost to himself, "Aaron would have killed me for being gone this long." Elena froze at those words, her heart squeezing painfully, because she knew Aaron loved his brother even when they fought. He had always hoped Caleb would return someday, not knowing that the day he left would be the last time they ever spoke. "He missed you," she said quietly, surprising herself. "Every day." Caleb's eyes glistened, not with tears, but with regret so heavy it could anchor mountains. And for the first time, she saw not the man who ran away, but the boy who once shared secrets and laughter with the man she loved. As the cold grew sharper, Caleb stepped closer to Elena, handing her his jacket without meeting her eyes. She hesitated but took it, wrapping it around herself as he turned toward the shelter and said softly, "I'm not leaving tonight. You two aren't staying in that drafty house alone." With this storm coming, Elena wanted to argue, but exhaustion weighed her down too much to resist. And maybe a small part of her wanted someone, anyone, to stand beside her for once. Lily yawned and leaned against Caleb's leg, and he picked her up with a gentleness that made Elena's chest tighten, because it had been so long since anyone treated her daughter like family. As they walked back to the house, the storm clouds gathering in the sky like a warning, Elena felt something shift inside her. Fear, hope, confusion all tangled into one, because Caleb's presence felt both dangerous and comforting, stirring emotions she wasn't ready for. But life had already taken enough from her. Maybe letting someone help was not weakness, but survival. And as the first droplets of rain fell against the dirt, Elena whispered to herself, barely audible, "Please don't leave again," not knowing Caleb had heard every word. And if you're watching this story so far, dear viewer, make sure to subscribe for Chapter 2, because everything changes when the storm hits, and secrets buried for years will come crashing into the night.